Welcome back to our podcast series here on Tyson's Tennis Tips. And boy, have we got a lot to talk about following the US Open 2021. And there's only one place to start, guys. Emma Raducanu. What a fantastic win against Leylah Fernandez in the final. Niels, coming to you first, what did you make of her performance and her rise to fame?
Emma Raducanu, I mean, for all these, she hasn't lost a single set in the entire US Open. I mean, that is just an incredible achievement that has never been done before. She's come all the way from qualifying. She spent 3 weeks at the US Open, and in an interview, she herself said she was expecting, to book a plane after that first week and go home. So this is just something that has just been observed by all the sporting greats around the world, and she's been congratulated by everybody because I don't think we will see that ever again, Sam. I think that's something extraordinary, and she is just an amazing athlete, an amazing tennis player, and deserves that win. In the final, 6-3, 6-4. That is a pretty solid win. Didn't really give Leylah Fernandez a lot of room. Played really well, played solid, came to net. Andrew Richardson did a good job with the way, he knew how she had to play, and she did that, and she just went through that plan and just played the game and won the US Open. So it's really an incredible achievement. Really, she deserves it. Worked hard and played well.
We're all recovering, Jar, aren't we, from what was just a quite remarkable result. We've seen, the headlines across the whole world regarding Emma Raducanu. And what did you make of it? What did you make of her, again, her stellar performance in New York?
Well, Sam, like Neil said, I mean, it's just simply incredible. No one has ever seen this being done in the tennis world. I mean, let's just put aside to 1 minute that she's 18. She's British, but also just how she just come out of nowhere. Nobody even knew who she really was before the tournament started, barely knew who she was after Wimbledon. And it's just an incredible story. And I think also a massive time for British tennis as well back home, inspiring a lot of the next generation, especially of female players. Yeah. So, it's going to be massive, not just for herself, but also for the next generation too.
No, absolutely. And Niels, I mean, what, in your opinion, what makes her such a special player? I mean, I've spoken about already this week in my coaching sessions about how early she takes the ball and how, her pinpoint accuracy, getting that ball near the baseline. But in your opinion, what makes her such a talent and such, an amazing player? What do you think?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I was watching her highlights yesterday. I was watching, I think, her first round and her quarterfinals, and she's very solid. She, from the back of the court, she doesn't make any mistakes, and she dominates. And she has these unbelievable margin of errors where every ball is safe and secure, but still aggressive with a good amount of pace. She stays very low, which basically means that, she's got that balance. She's got that aesthetic sort of balanced sort of stance where she can hit the ball every time she goes through the ball. She's just very focused. When you look at the way she's waiting for that ball, all she wants is just to hit that ball. She's hungry for more. She wants to win more than anything, which you can see in a match. And she's physically just very light, very strong and very light, moves very well, very agile. She can volley. She's got a lovely slice serve, which is very important, which makes a huge difference because obviously that means you can take your opponent off the court and you can go line. And she obviously loves to come to the net as well. I think it's just a mixture of a lot of things which makes her very, very, very good. It's not just one thing that makes her extraordinary. I think that is why she has beaten some of the best players in the world, because some players maybe just have the movement or a great forehand or a great serve. But it seems that Emma Raducanu seems to have it all, which is something extraordinary, and you don't see that every day. So my opinion is just a mixture of a lot of different things which make her very great and which could bring her to the top of female tennis.
I agree. I completely agree, Niels. I mean, Jaya, what do you think to the young tennis players? I mean, we're all coaching many players every week. What, in your opinion, Jaya, do the young players, when we talk about her inspiring the next generation, especially young girls coming through, we know how important that is. What do you think, Jaya, these young players can sort of copy from Raducanu? What can they learn from her game that then we can bring into their coaching sessions?
Well, I think firstly, it just sums up that anyone can get to her position. I mean, it doesn't matter where you start, where you play, your background. I think anyone can pick up a racket. Anyone can go down to their local parks, tennis club and just start playing. And who knows, 10 years time, or you know how many years, it doesn't matter, but you can get right up to the top. I mean, there are many attributes that Raducanu has shown that is very inspiring to the young generation. I mean, it just goes down to her athleticism. I think, like Neil said, I mean, I think he summed it up brilliantly. The way she just gets so low on every ball, she's just able to stay so balanced on every single shot. I mean, she's a bit like Djokovic in the way she moves, the way she hits the ball, her consistency, her just all-round game. And I think it's brilliant to see that on the women's side, because I feel like sometimes the women, you know, they've got some really strong parts in their game, but then they've got some weaker parts. But I feel like she's got a really good combination of both. And it's just building athletes like Raducanu that have that all-round game. I think it's just great to see. Yeah,
and I mean, Jaya, for watching that final against Leylah Fernandez, we have to give her credit. The young Canadian, only a year older than Raducanu, 19 years old. The crowd were definitely on her side as well, but she was fantastic. I have to say, it's the best women's tennis match I think I've ever seen. That's how far I'll go with that statement. I absolutely loved watching it from start to finish. What do you think comes next then for Raducanu? What, Niels, I'll come to you first on that. Where can she go from here? She's just obviously achieved the pinnacle in tennis, winning the US Open Grand Slam. But what's next for Emma?
The problem with winning at such a big Grand Slam at 18, it's pressure. Everybody, she's gone from 150 in the world to 23 in the world. That is a very, very fast rise. Everybody's watching her. Everybody expects her to succeed. It's not that easy. So in my eyes, I think she's got all the tools to succeed. So I think obviously the year's almost over. So it's going to be next year. She's going to have to really, really show what she's made of, and not just show that she can win one thing and then, you know, sort of disappear. Because we had that with Yelena Ostapenko. If we remember correctly, she won the French Open, and since then she's won tournaments. She's won a couple of small tournaments, but she's not really been present. She's been losing in first round, second rounds, not really doing that well. So Ane Ivanovic won one Grand Slam, went to number one, and then sort of, you know, not disappeared, but wasn't as strong as we thought she would be. So there is a history of players who have won tournaments very early and who've succeeded very early, but then have had problems to follow that up. I think Emma Raducanu could be different. I think she could win multiple Grand Slams, and I do see her going top 5. Number 1 is it's not easy. I'm sure she can do it, but I don't want to go too much. I'm going to say she could be top 5 in the future. She's got obviously a very bright future ahead. We have seen as well, she's done A-level. She's a very bright girl as well. So she's not just a great athlete. You know, she knows what it takes to be in that game. She knows that you have to shake hands. She knows you have to do interviews. She speaks loads of languages as well. So I think the way she's doing it, if she keeps her head down and work hard, I think she can be a very successful professional tennis player.
So Jaya, Neil's going top 5 in the world. Future prediction. What do you think comes next for Emma Raducanu? How far can she go?
I think Niels is right. I think a lot of pressure comes with it, but at the same time, I think she's got a brilliant coaching team around her with Andrew Richardson and the rest of her team. And I think it just goes to show during that tournament, the way that they helped us to stay grounded, focus on the tennis, not on other things, which it could have been very easy to focus on. But definitely needs to take a rest now, just take a bit of time out tennis, just let it all soak in, because it's one of the biggest sporting achievements you can achieve in tennis. So she definitely needs to take some time away from the game. But I definitely see no reason why she can't make it to the top 5 and beyond.
No, I completely agree with you guys. It's so exciting, especially for British tennis. And we will see. She thinks she's got an outside chance of making obviously the World Tour finals, I think in Mexico in November. So you never know. I mean, that would be some achievement if she could get there. Moving on then to our next big story following the US Open, Daniil Medvedev. We just have to talk about him. What a win against Novak Djokovic. It was so easy in the final, wasn't it? Against the crowd as well. I've never seen a crowd so much on Djokovic's side. So Medvedev had a lot to contend with there. Jaya, coming to you first on this one. What did you make of Medvedev's performance throughout the 2 weeks in New York?
Oh, Sam, unbelievable display of tennis from Medvedev throughout the 2 weeks. I mean, it just goes down to how consistent he is in every match. He's definitely got his mental side much more on point now. I mean, can't really recall him having any outbursts, any significant outbursts during the whole tournament. So I think that's helped him a lot to get to the finals. And then to beat Djokovic, I mean, he was like the villain at the party. I mean, just putting a complete dampener on Djokovic going for his 4 Grand Slams in a year. But at the same time, he completely deserved it. I mean, why shouldn't he go out there and try and beat Djokovic? And the way he did it, the fashion he did it in, beating him in straight sets, is quite remarkable. And I definitely feel like next year he could be going for that #1 position.
Absolutely. Niels, what did you make of the Russian?
Couldn't agree more with Jaya. I mean, honestly, Djokovic is such an amazing player. #1 for a reason. Surpassed Federer now as most weeks at #1. He's had a very great year, but obviously not winning the Olympics. I think that's just made it a bit harder for him because he was expecting to win it. He is very tired as well. He's had a very, very, very long year, playing a lot of matches. That does take its toll, even when you're Djokovic, the god of tennis. So I think Medvedev played on that as well a little bit. And if we've seen Medvedev in the last week, 2 weeks, he's just been a wall. He's just, nothing goes through. He's just there and he wants it so bad because it's his first Grand Slam. Djokovic has had 20 Grand Slams. He's had an amazing career already. Yeah. Medvedev is just at the start. So for me, I think there's maybe that little 1% push that Medvedev had that Djokovic didn't, just because even though he is so determined and so focused, your motivation, I think you lose just a tiny little bit after winning all that, even though Djokovic is still on it and still wants to win it. Medvedev, that was his first one. And I think he is in contention next year with Djokovic for that #1. As Jai already said, it's going to be a very, very difficult fight. And Djokovic is really going to have to be careful because Medvedev is really on his heels and is not far away and is just waiting for that one slip up from Djokovic. So again, I think Medvedev just played awesome tennis, deserves that Grand Slam, and honestly, hats off to him. Yeah,
I mean, going back to Niels, your point there, you saw Djokovic slapping his thighs, I think very early on in that match. And you could see he was, trying to get himself going, his legs moving at the speed they normally do. I mean, Jai, what did you make of that with Djokovic's fitness fatigue, we could call it perhaps?
Absolutely, Sam. I think the commentators were saying at the time, like, nobody's ever seen him do that on a tennis court. I mean, it just goes to show, well, firstly, his physical condition and that he was feeling tired, but also just mentally, I think maybe he was just collapsing. I think early on after the first and then going deep into the second, he was just that dream of actually winning 4 Grand Slams in a year. I think that was slowly just not becoming a reality anymore. And I think he was just slowly realizing that. And then, I think it was just ultimately Medvedev that just powered through and just never looked back and left Djokovic with no chance. But yeah, I definitely feel like he was struggling physically. A lot of matches under his belt.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I say Medvedev, we look at the other young rising stars coming through on the men's side. We've got obviously Aliassime, who I know Niels, you mentioned quite a bit back in the summer. We've obviously got Alcaraz. And then you've got the guys who've been there for a little bit longer, Zverev, Tsitsipas. What makes Medvedev, Niels, a cut currently above the rest?
I think Tsitsipas, Aliassime, all these guys. I think Zverev is up there. I think Zverev is just, I think with him it's just on and off. I think what Medvedev does better than that for me, Aliassime and Alcaraz at the moment, it's just the fact he's more efficient. His game is not that pretty, but it's not about how pretty your game is. It's about how efficient it is. Every shot is timed to perfection. His movement is on there. He's just focused on winning. And I think for me, maybe Alcaraz is very young still, but for me, for example, Aliassime, whom I absolutely love, who's just a lovely player to watch, he's got the right mindset, who's going to be a future champion. I think at the moment, maybe his development is a little bit slower. And I think Medvedev is pushing for that. I want to win. Because at the end of the day, at that level, your goal is to win tournaments. If you're at that level, if you're playing top 5, top 6 in the world, if you've got the potential, the goal is to win 500 events and 1,000 events and Grand Slams and save match points and being able to fight for that #1 spot or 2 spot in that case. This sport is so harsh. So the only way you succeed is really if you win tournaments and if you make yourself noticed. And Medvedev is a very different guy, the way he speaks and just the way he is on court. He's very different to everybody else. And I think that kind of gives him credit to him, because it's not an easy world when you've got a Roger and a Rafa and a Joker out there, and even a Murray still out there, and loads of other players who've been there for ages. It's not easy to just knock on the door and say, hey, boys, my turn now. And it is the way he's playing and the way he's doing things. He's got that mindset. And for me, I think he's probably the closest thing that we probably will have to Djokovic when Djokovic retires, because he's just got that mindset of, I'm never going to give up. I'm going to stay with you until you break down.
And also nails his confidence as well. You just look at him; he didn't care less, did he? That the crowd weren't on his side.
What makes him so good is he likes the crowd, but he has said in his past interviews, he doesn't really. I mean, the crowd is important to him, but it's not as important. He plays for himself. He plays because he wants to win and for his family. He doesn't play for the crowd, which is unusual. Because a guy like Monfils or Djokovic and all these other guys, Murray and Nishikori, even Nishikori, they all love that crowd. That crowd is what boosts them, what gives them energy. For him, his energy comes from here. And that you don't see that a lot for me. I mean, I'm going to have to say it's very impressive and big respect to him. And yeah, at the end of the day, it was a mixture as well of Djokovic being tired again. While with Jai said having a long season, you don't see Djokovic usually slapping his thighs. It's almost as if he was trying to wake himself up, not believing that he was getting absolutely bulldozed by Medvedev. So honestly, hats off to both of them. It's not easy to lose, but it's also not that easy to win. You have to win against Djokovic when you're 2 sets to love up with a break and everything. You still have to go through and win. Not everybody can do that. So hats off to both of them. And yeah, great US Open, really.
Jai, thoughts on that?
Yeah, couldn't agree with Niels more there. Definitely, I think Medvedev's just had that little extra time at the top of the game. I think he's got age on his side. He's slightly older than the rest of them. So I think he's just learnt how to deal with these situations slightly better than the younger guys. I'm not saying they don't have the game to challenge Medvedev, but I just feel like he's got that maturity that maybe the younger ones don't quite have at the big stage at the moment. But I definitely feel like give these young guys a few more years and they'll definitely be knocking on the doors to the number 1, number 2, and number 3 spots. And yeah, I think we'll start winning some bigger tournaments possibly next year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, we mentioned Alcaraz and Aliassime in particular, those 2 very young players coming up. I just think now Medvedev has a real chance to dominate on the men's side. It's almost like the genie has come out of the bottle and we don't really know what's going to happen next with him. But I do have a sneaky feeling he's gonna dominate for 2022. I'm not saying he's going to obviously have some fantastic stars coming up, and obviously we've got hopefully Nadal, Federer potentially giving Wimbledon one more shot, Murray obviously had that brilliant match against Tsitsipas in the first round. Talking of Tsitsipas, Niels, we mentioned that the Tsitsipas toilet trouble was obviously our headline in the title of this podcast. What did you make of that? Started in round 1 against Murray and unfortunately continued.
I am going to have to side with Andy Murray on this. I know there's been a massive scandal of that. And for me, I mean, Murray, he's just a legend of the game. He's somebody who's been playing the game for a long time. You have to respect that. And for me, Tsitsipas it's not the first time he's been in trouble with other players. There have been little escapades and little fights against players like Medvedev and other players. He's known for that sort of, even though he's won that set, he knows what he needs to do. And it was just so clear when he goes to the toilet and the camera zooms in on his dad texting. I mean, who could his dad be texting? I think that's just not very fair, not very respectful to somebody like Murray, who is a bit older, who kind of needs that time on court, and who does cool down very fast. So for him, when he comes back, even if it's just 8 minutes later, that does make a difference for somebody like Murray. For somebody like Alcaraz or Aliassime or Medvedev, they'll get angry, but they're still in shape. That's okay. Murray is quite an older player now. He's had a hip replacement. He is not physically at his peak anymore. He needs to be kept warm. And I think even though Tsitsipas won that set, he just wanted to make really sure that Murray would not come back. In my opinion, it's an absolute disgrace. I don't think you should be able to do that. And there are changes being made from what I've heard from Novak Djokovic's interviews and Murray's interviews, who are both on the player committee, saying that they might change the rules that Tsitsipas will not be able to do that, nor will any other player. And I think that is the right precautions to take, really, because something like that should not be allowed.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was going to say, Niels, that it's been rumoured that the rules might be changing. Jaya, do you think the rules need to change on this issue? Because, like we say, it obviously affected Murray, but on the flip side, Tsitsipas currently is within his right to do that. So, what are your thoughts on the issue?
Well, yeah, I mean, firstly, I don't think it's the issue of going to the toilet is a big problem. I think it's just the time that it takes for him to go to the toilet is too long. So I think there's a simple solution: just put a time limit on you allow 5 minutes, or you allow 2 5-minute toilet breaks in a match. Maybe if it's a best of 3, it's only 1. Best of 5, it's 2.
Yeah.
And it's job done. If they're over 5 minutes, maybe they allow 1 minute leeway or something. And then if they're out of that time, then they lose the first point or the first game or whatever. And then job done. I mean, I know different tournaments, you know, the toilet blocks are in different places, so it could take longer to get there. But I think it's down to the umpire's discretion and how he deals with it. But I don't think it should be a headline piece of news that this is going on, really, to be honest. I think it should be clamped down on.
Yeah. And you almost, when part of me, you know, I'm a big Tsitsipas fan, you almost, I don't know, so this is probably going against potentially Neil's, especially hearing you speak there, but you almost feel a bit sorry for him, because they say it's in the rules, but he is obviously at the same time taking the mick a little bit. And the amount of players that have come out following the issue, there was numerous players across social media who spoke out. Surprise, surprise, one of them, Nick Kyrgios, always looking to grab the headlines. But yeah, as I say, it'll be fascinating to see what happens on that issue, and can Tsitsipas draw back in his huge fan base that he had. As I say, at the moment, he's certainly not in favour in New York, so it'll be interesting to see, guys, whether he can sort of bounce back and get the crowd back on his side. Because I feel like he's a player who definitely, you know, we spoke about Medvedev earlier, you know, not necessarily needing the crowd on his side to perform at his best. I think Tsitsipas potentially does. What were your thoughts on that? Neil, it's coming to you.
I personally think I agree with you completely on that, Sam. I think Tsitsipas does need the crowd. I think Tsitsipas is smart enough to know what he's doing. I'm not going to lie, Sam, I know you really like him. I've never been a big fan of Tsitsipas, so maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him, but I've never really, his game you have to admire. You know, he is an admirable competitor. He's fighting at the top, just like everybody else, doing his job, working hard every single day, day in, day out. Respect for that. The person, I'm not a big fan of, even obviously I don't know him, but you can get a sense from his interviews and the way he talks and the way he is. He is very arrogant, and he just kind of does what he wants when he wants. The only problem we have is he's a top 3 player, which means that even if something bad happens, he has to have, you know, sort of positive publicity, because he is one of the examples. Every little boy on this planet is watching him. Everybody's going, I would like to be like Tsitsipas when I'm older. And that toilet break just shows, it's not the toilet break, it kind of just shows that he does whatever he wants when he wants it. And at that age, you should be grown up enough, and that, as you're an example for so many people around the world, you should be able to just, you know, be responsible, go to the toilet and come back just like everybody else. There's a 1,000 other players who do that every single match, and who have never caused trouble. Somehow he is the only player who has caused trouble and who's made this a scandal. This should not be a scandal. The goal of the ATP Tour is that when there are headlines, it's about results. It's about even injuries. Sadly, that is something important, obviously, because we see the players, that is something their lives, you know, depend on. If they're injured, they can't play. If somebody upsets somebody, or if there's been a great result, like Raducanu or Medvedev, those are headlines you want to see. You do not want to see Tsitsipas in the headlines because there is some sort of toilet issue. That should not be, as Jai said before, that should not be the case. So for me, again, I use the word again on purpose. It's a big disgrace for me. That should just not be part of the game, really.
Jai, anything else to add on the Tsitsipas toilet trouble?
I think enough's been said. I don't think it deserves any more time, to be honest, Sam. I think it's pretty. Yeah, it shouldn't be making the news, and I think it just goes down to a certain element of disrespect to his opponents. I mean, who knows if he was playing against Federer or Djokovic, if it would have been the same sort of outcome when he went to the toilet. Maybe he would have been back in the flash. Who knows? Maybe it's just down to the person he's playing against. But just put one rule in place. It's the same for everybody else, and then there's no way getting around it. And then, it's all settled.
There we go then. What a tournament it was. I have to say, my favourite Grand Slam of all time. That US Open, I absolutely loved it. So many good matches. I hope you did too. Can you leave your comments below? What are your thoughts on all the 3 subjects we spoke about, with obviously Radicani, Medvedev, and obviously the Tsitsipas toilet trouble as well? So leave your comments below. We'd love to hear from you. The next big event, obviously in the tennis calendar, will be the World Tour Finals in November. So we're all very, very excited for that. In the meantime, the three of us will be back for our next podcast soon. If you're new to our channel, as always, do us a big favor, hit that subscribe button and also the like icon as well. That'll help us reach more tennis fans out there. For now, we'll leave it there, guys. Thanks as always, Niels and Jaya, for having you both on. From everyone, from all of us here, we will see you soon.